On the morning of March 14th, 1985, in the industrial town of Muskegon Heights, Michigan, a 17-year-old girl named Lisa Marie Holland left her family's modest ranch house on Getty Street to walk the 6 blocks to Muskegon Heights High School. She carried a canvas backpack decorated with hand-drawn flowers, wore a denim jacket over a yellow sweater, and had promised her younger sister she would be home by 4 o'clock to help bake a birthday cake. Lisa Holland never arrived at school that morning. She never came home that afternoon. And for 39 years, the question that haunted Muskegon Heights was not just what happened to her, but who among them had been hiding the truth all along. Muskegon Heights in 1985 was a town caught between 2 identities. Once a thriving lumber hub along the eastern shore of Lake Michigan, it had weathered decades of economic decline, watching factories close and families leave. The population had dwindled to just over 13,000 residents, most of them working-class families clinging to the kind of community where neighbors still knew each other's names and children could walk to school without fear. The downtown corridor along Broadway Avenue still held a Woolworth's, a bakery that opened before dawn, and Joe's Hardware, where men gathered on Saturday mornings to discuss the Tigers' spring training prospects. The streets were lined with modest homes built in the 1940s and 50s, many with chain-link fences and American flags hanging from front porches. In winter, Lake Michigan winds cut through the town with particular cruelty. By March, residents were desperate for any sign of spring. The Holland family lived in a pale blue ranch-style house with white shutters at 2847 Getty Street, on the eastern edge of town, where the residential neighborhoods gave way to empty lots and the occasional abandoned warehouse. Dennis Holland, 42, worked the night shift at the Shawwalker Furniture Factory, operating a lathe that cut aluminum framing. His wife, Patricia Holland, 39, cleaned houses 3 days a week and worked part-time at the major supermarket on weekends. They had 3 children, Lisa, the eldest, at 17, Michael, 14, and Jennifer, who would turn 12 on March 16th. The family attended Bethel Baptist Church most Sundays, though Dennis sometimes worked overtime and missed service. Neighbors described them as quiet, private, the kind of family you would wave to from your driveway but rarely see at neighborhood barbecues. Lisa Holland was a senior, scheduled to graduate in June. She had dark blonde hair that fell past her shoulders, green eyes, and a habit of biting her lower lip when she was concentrating. Her teachers described her as conscientious but not exceptional, a girl who turned in assignments on time and sat in the middle rows, neither seeking attention nor avoiding it. She worked weekends at the Dairy Queen on Sherman Boulevard, saving money for a car. She had been dating a boy named Travis Newkirk for 8 months. He was a year older, worked at his father's auto body shop, and drove a burgundy Chevrolet Monte Carlo that Lisa's mother thought was too flashy for a 19-year-old. Patricia Holland had told her daughter she could see Travis on weekends, but not on school nights. Lisa had agreed without argument. The morning of March 14, 1985, began like most others in the Holland household. Clear as throat, Dennis Holland arrived home from his shift at 6:45 a.m., parking his Ford F-150 in the driveway with the careful precision of someone who has worked all night and wants only to sleep. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting long shadows across the frost-covered lawns. Inside, Patricia Holland was in the kitchen making coffee, the percolator producing its familiar rhythmic sound. The radio on the counter played softly, a news announcer discussing President Reagan's proposed tax reforms. Jennifer was at the kitchen table eating cereal, still in her pajamas. Michael was in the bathroom, the sound of running water audible through the thin walls. Lisa came downstairs at 7:12 a.m. She wore the outfit she had laid out the night before. Dark blue jeans, white sneakers, the yellow crewneck sweater her grandmother had given her for Christmas, and her denim jacket. She had pulled her hair back into a ponytail. Her mother would later remember that Lisa had seemed tired, that she had yawned while pouring herself a glass of orange juice. They discussed Jennifer's birthday cake. Lisa suggested chocolate with vanilla frosting. Patricia said they would need to stop at the store for more eggs. Lisa said she would be home by 4. They could go together. She grabbed an apple from the bowl on the counter and put it in her backpack along with her biology textbook and a spiral notebook. Dennis Holland was already in bed when Lisa left. He did not see her that morning. Michael left for his own school, walking in the opposite direction. At 7:25 a.m. Jennifer had choir practice before school and caught a ride with a neighbor at 7:30. Patricia Holland was alone in the kitchen when Lisa called out, "I'm leaving, Mom. See you at 4. Patricia called back, "Have a good day, honey. Love you." The front door closed at 7:33 a.m. through the kitchen window. Patricia Holland watched her daughter walk down the driveway, adjust her backpack, and turn left onto Getty Street, heading west toward Sherman Boulevard. The morning was cold but clear. The temperature was 28 degrees. Small patches of old snow lingered in the shadows of houses and beneath parked cars. Lisa Holland had a routine. She walked Getty Street for 3 blocks until it intersected with Sherman Boulevard. She then turned right and walked north on Sherman for 2 blocks, passing the Dairy Queen where she worked, the Amoco gas station on the corner, and Frank's barber shop. At the intersection of Sherman and Glenside Avenue, she would meet her best friend, Amy Kowalski, who lived in the apartment complex there. Together, they would walk the final block to Muskegon Heights High School, a sprawling brick building that served grades 9 through 12. The walk took Lisa approximately 14 minutes when she walked alone, 11 minutes when she walked with Amy, and they talked quickly, their breath forming clouds in the cold air. That morning, Amy Kowalski waited at the corner of Sherman and Glenside from 7:40 a.m. until 7:52 a.m. Lisa did not appear. Amy assumed Lisa had gotten a ride or had left early for some reason. She walked to school alone, arriving just before the first bell at 8 a.m. when Lisa was not in their shared first period English class. Amy thought perhaps she was sick. When Lisa was absent from second period biology and third period history, Amy began to worry but did not yet think anything was seriously wrong. For those who have ever been 17, you understand that absence can mean many things. Illness, a dentist appointment, a family obligation. It rarely means something terrible. Patricia Holland was folding laundry in the living room when the phone rang at 1:15 p.m. It was the school attendance office. A woman's voice, polite but formal, asked if Mrs. Holland was aware that Lisa had not attended school that day. Patricia felt something shift inside her chest, a small cold weight. She said there must be a mistake. She had watched Lisa leave that morning. The woman on the phone said Lisa had been marked absent from all classes. Patricia thanked her and hung up. She called the Dairy Queen. Her manager said Lisa was not scheduled to work until Saturday. Patricia called Amy Kowalski's mother. Amy got on the phone and said she had not seen Lisa that morning. Patricia called Travis Newkirk at the auto body shop. Travis said he had not spoken to Lisa since Tuesday evening. Patricia Holland stood in her kitchen, the phone receiver still in her hand, and felt the cold weight expand into something approaching fear. She woke her husband. Dennis Holland listened, his face creasing with confusion and then concern. He said maybe Lisa had gone somewhere with friends, maybe she had decided to skip school. Patricia said that was not like Lisa. Dennis said maybe she was at the mall, maybe she was upset about something. Patricia said Lisa would have told her. Dennis got dressed. They drove Getty Street, Sherman Boulevard, every route Lisa might have taken. They stopped at the Dairy Queen, the library, the houses of girls Lisa knew from school. No one had seen her. They returned home at 3:40 p.m., hoping Lisa would be there waiting with some simple explanation. The house was empty. Jennifer was not yet home from school. Michael was at a friend's house. The kitchen was exactly as Patricia had left it. The bowl of apples sat on the counter, one missing. At 4:30 p.m., Dennis Holland called the Muskegon Heights Police Department. The officer who answered asked how long Lisa had been missing. Dennis said since that morning. The officer asked if there had been a fight, if Lisa had a boyfriend, if she had ever run away before. Dennis answered, "No fight, yes a boyfriend. No, she had never run away." The officer said most teenagers who disappear come home within 24 hours. He suggested the Hollands wait, make phone calls, check with friends. Dennis Holland felt anger rise in his throat but forced his voice to remain level. He said his daughter did not disappear. Something had happened. The officer said he understood, but department policy required a waiting period. Dennis hung up. By evening, Patricia Holland had called everyone she could think of. Travis Newkirk came to the house at 6 p.m., his face pale, his hands shaking slightly. He told the Hollands he loved Lisa, he would never hurt her. He did not know where she was. Dennis studied the boy's face and believed him. Neighbors began to gather. Word spread quickly in a town like Muskegon Heights. By 8 p.m., there were 12 people in the Holland living room, some making lists of places to search, others organizing into groups to drive through the town. A woman from Bethel Baptist Church brought a casserole no one would eat. Jennifer sat on the stairs leading to the second floor, crying quietly. Michael sat beside his father on the couch, silent and rigid. Patricia Holland could not sit still. She moved from room to room, looking out windows, checking the phone, opening the front door to stare into the darkness of Getty Street as though Lisa might materialize from the shadows. At midnight, Dennis Holland returned to the police station. This time, a different officer was on duty. A detective named Frank Garrison, who had worked in Muskegon Heights for 19 years. Detective Garrison listened to Dennis Holland describe his daughter. 17 years old, 5 feet 4 inches tall, approximately 115 pounds. Blonde hair, green eyes, last seen wearing a yellow sweater, denim jacket, blue jeans, white sneakers, carrying a canvas backpack. Detective Garrison took notes. He asked about Lisa's habits, her friends, her state of mind. He asked if she had access to money. He asked if there was any reason she might want to leave. Dennis Holland answered each question, his voice growing hoarse. Detective Garrison said he would file a report. He said he would contact officers on patrol. He said the department would begin looking. But his eyes held something that Dennis Holland recognized. The sad knowledge that most missing teenagers are runaways, and runaways usually come home, and until evidence suggested otherwise, there was only so much the department could do. The search began in earnest at dawn on March 15th. Volunteers assembled at the high school parking lot at 6 a.m. There were 43 people initially. Neighbors, church members, teachers, students, people who had never met Lisa Holland but understood what her disappearance meant. Detective Garrison organized them into teams of 4, assigning each team a section of Muskegon Heights to search. They walked alleys, checked dumpsters, knocked on doors, asked if anyone had seen a teenage girl in a yellow sweater. The local radio station, WGHN, broadcast Lisa's description every hour. The Muskegon Chronicle ran a front-page story on March 16th with Lisa's school photo. She was smiling, her head tilted slightly, her eyes bright. The headline read, "Local teen missing since Thursday morning." By March 17th, the search had expanded. Michigan State Police were contacted. Bloodhounds were brought in, given Lisa's scent from her pillowcase, and walked the route from Getty Street to the high school. They lost the scent at Sherman Boulevard, near the intersection where Getty met Sherman, approximately 3 blocks from Lisa's house. Clear's throat. Divers searched the retention pond behind the closed paper mill. They found shopping carts, tires, broken glass, but no body. Investigators interviewed everyone who lived along Getty Street and Sherman Boulevard. An elderly man named Harold Vickers said he had been sitting on his porch at 7:30 a.m. on March 14th, drinking coffee, and had seen a girl matching Lisa's description walking west on Getty. He said she had been alone. He said he had not seen any cars slow down or stop. A woman named Dolores Martin, who lived 2 houses down from the Hollands, said she had been leaving for work at approximately the same time and had also seen Lisa walking. She said Lisa had seemed fine, normal, not hurried or upset. Travis Newkirk was interviewed 3 times. Each time he told the same story. He had last seen Lisa on Tuesday, March 12th. They had gone to a movie at the Starlight Cinema, a showing of The Breakfast Club. He had driven her home at 9:45 p.m. They had kissed goodnight in his car. He had not spoken to her on Wednesday, March 13th, though they had planned to talk on the phone that evening, and he had called but got no answer. He assumed she had fallen asleep early. On Thursday, March 14th, he had been at work by 7:30 a.m. His father confirmed this. Detective Garrison noted that Travis seemed genuinely distraught, that his alibi was solid, that there was no evidence connecting him to Lisa's disappearance. For those who have ever lived in a small town, you understand that when something like this happens, suspicion spreads like groundwater, seeping into every corner, poisoning the ordinary. People began to watch each other differently. Men who lived alone were regarded with new wariness. Teenagers who had been friends with Lisa were questioned by their own parents. The high school felt different, the hallways quieter, the laughter forced. Amy Kowalski told detectives that Lisa had seemed normal recently, maybe a little tired but not unhappy or scared. She said Lisa had been excited about graduation, about getting a car, about maybe going to community college in the fall. She said Lisa had never mentioned wanting to run away. She said Lisa loved her little sister, loved her family, would never put them through this. By March 20th, the investigation had generated over 200 tips, most of them leading nowhere. Someone reported seeing a girl matching Lisa's description at a truck stop near Grand Rapids. Police investigated. It was not Lisa. Someone else called to say they had seen a girl who looked like Lisa getting into a brown van near downtown Muskegon. Police investigated. They found the van, found the driver, confirmed he had been at work in Lansing on March 14th. A psychic contacted the department, said Lisa was near water, said she could see pine trees and a red building. Volunteers searched every location fitting that description. They found nothing. Detective Garrison's notes from March 22nd read, interviewed DH again, asked about family dynamics. DH states family is close, no major conflicts. Asked specifically about relationship between LH and mother. DH states they get along well, normal mother-daughter relationship. Asked about recent arguments or tensions. DH denies any. Asked about LH's recent behavior, any changes. DH states LH seemed normal, sleep patterns normal, eating habits normal, mood normal, DH becoming agitated with questioning. States we should be looking for whoever took his daughter, not looking at the family. Patricia Holland stopped sleeping. She would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house settle, imagining she heard the front door opening, footsteps in the hallway, her daughter's voice calling out. She started walking Getty Street and Sherman Boulevard herself, at dawn, at dusk, at midnight, tracing Lisa's route, searching for something the volunteers and police had missed. Neighbors watched her from their windows, some with pity, some with unease. Dennis Holland returned to work at the furniture factory but could not focus. His supervisor gave him leave. He spent his days driving around Muskegon Heights and the surrounding towns, following roads he thought Lisa might have traveled if someone had taken her, scanning ditches and tree lines. Jennifer refused to have a birthday party. Michael's grades dropped. The Holland house became a place where people spoke in hushed tones, where the television played without anyone watching it, where the phone rang constantly with tips that went nowhere. By April, the search had slowed. Volunteers had jobs to return to, lives to resume. The media coverage diminished. Detective Garrison told the Hollands the case remained open, that they were still investigating, but his tone had shifted. Those who knew him said he had stopped believing they would find Lisa alive. The official theory, never stated explicitly but implied in the careful language of police reports, was that Lisa Holland had been abducted by a stranger, likely someone passing through Muskegon Heights, someone who had seen an opportunity and taken it. But there was no evidence to support this theory. There was no evidence to support any theory. Lisa Holland had walked out of her house on a Thursday morning in March and had vanished into the cold Michigan air as though she had never existed at all. Part 2. The investigation. The Muskegon Heights Police Department, staffed by 17 officers and 4 detectives, was not equipped to handle a case of this magnitude. Detective Frank Garrison, who took the lead on the investigation, had worked primarily property crimes and domestic disputes. He was methodical but not imaginative, thorough but limited by budget and manpower. By late April 1985, he had interviewed over 150 people, compiled 7 3-ring binders of notes and statements, and had nothing resembling a solid lead. The FBI was contacted in early April, but declined to become directly involved, citing lack of evidence of interstate flight or kidnapping. They provided consulting support, reviewing case files and offering suggestions, but the investigation remained local. The search of Muskegon Heights and surrounding areas had been exhaustive. Volunteers had combed through wooded areas, abandoned buildings, drainage ditches, and riverbanks. They had walked the shore of Muskegon Lake and the banks of Bear Creek. They had searched the grounds of closed factories and empty lots where vagrants sometimes camped. On April 3rd, a dog walker found a denim jacket partially buried in leaves near the bike path that ran parallel to Mona Lake, approximately 4 miles from Getty Street. The jacket was taken to the police station. Patricia Holland was called in to examine it. She held it in her hands, turned it over, studied the buttons and seams. It was not Lisa's jacket. Lisa's jacket had a small tear on the left sleeve, repaired with navy thread. This jacket was intact. Patricia handed it back to Detective Garrison and walked out of the station without speaking. Those who knew Detective Garrison said he began to change in late April. He became quieter, more withdrawn. He would sit in his office long after his shift ended, reviewing witness statements, looking for something he had missed. He told his wife, during a rare conversation about the case, that he felt like he was working a puzzle with half the pieces missing. He said something did not fit, but he could not articulate what. His wife suggested he was overthinking it. She said sometimes teenagers run away and are never found. Garrison did not respond. The community's initial unity began to fracture. Rumors started to circulate, the kind that emerge when people have no answers and need someone to blame. Some said Lisa had been involved with drugs, though there was no evidence of this. Some said she had been pregnant, running away to have an abortion, though this too was baseless. Some said Travis Newkirk had been more involved than he admitted, that his alibi was not as solid as it seemed, though investigators had verified his presence at the auto body shop through multiple witnesses and time-stamped work orders. The Holland family felt the shift. People who had brought casseroles in March stopped calling in May. Some neighbors avoided eye contact. Patricia Holland understood what was happening. People needed to believe there was a reason, a cause, something that would explain why Lisa was gone and their own children were safe. If Lisa had been troubled, if she had made poor choices, then it could not happen to them. Patricia stopped going to church. Dennis stopped answering the phone. On May 8, 1985, a man named Carl Benson contacted the police department. He was a truck driver who regularly traveled Interstate 96 between Detroit and Grand Rapids. He said that on the morning of March 14th, he had stopped at a rest area near Coopersville, approximately 40 minutes from Muskegon Heights, at around 8:30 a.m. He said he had seen a girl who might have been Lisa Holland standing near the edge of the parking lot, looking distressed. He said he had not approached her because he had been in a hurry, and now, having seen her photo in the newspaper weeks later, he thought he should report it. Detective Garrison drove to Coopersville. He interviewed staff at the rest area. No one remembered seeing a teenage girl on March 14th. Security cameras had recorded over the footage weeks ago. The lead evaporated. Deputies whispered quietly among themselves about the case, the conversations that happen in break rooms and parking lots, away from official reports. One officer said he thought Lisa had gotten into a car with someone she knew, that the abduction theory did not make sense given the time of day and the residential location. Another said he thought Lisa might have been planning to run away and had been picked up by a friend. A third said none of it made sense, that the pieces did not fit, that something about the family seemed off though he could not say what. These conversations never made it into official reports. They were speculation, instinct, the kind of thing you cannot write down without evidence. Clear's throat, physical evidence was almost non-existent. Lisa's backpack was never found. Her body was never found. No witnesses came forward who had seen anything unusual on Getty Street or Sherman Boulevard on the morning of March 14th, beyond the two who had seen Lisa walking alone. Detectives canvassed every business along Sherman Boulevard. The Amoco gas station attendant said he had been working that morning but had not noticed Lisa. The owner of Frank's barber shop said he had not opened until 9 a.m. and had seen nothing. The Dairy Queen had been closed. A woman who worked at the laundromat next to the gas station said she had been in the back sorting clothes and had not been paying attention to the street. Investigators attempted to establish a precise timeline. Lisa had left her house at 7:33 a.m., confirmed by her mother. Harold Vickers had seen her walking west on Getty Street at approximately 7:35 a.m., confirmed by his watch, which he said he had checked. Dolores Martin had seen her at approximately the same time, also heading west. Amy Kowalski had waited for Lisa at the corner of Sherman and Glenside until 7:52 a.m., confirmed by the church bells from Bethel Baptist, which rang every hour and at the quarter hours. Lisa should have reached that corner by 7:47 a.m. at the latest. She had not. Somewhere in those 12 to 14 minutes between leaving her house on Getty Street and reaching the corner of Sherman and Glenside, Lisa Holland had disappeared. Detective Garrison walked the route himself repeatedly, timing it with a stopwatch. 14 minutes if walking at a normal pace, 12 minutes if walking quickly. He examined every house along the route, every driveway where a car might have been parked, every alley or gap between buildings where someone might have been hidden. The route was straightforward, residential, the kind of walk thousands of teenagers take every day without incident. There were no abandoned buildings along Getty Street, no dense woods or isolated areas, just houses, parked cars, chain-link fences, and sidewalks. For someone to have abducted Lisa, they would have had to approach her in broad daylight, on a residential street, overpower her without her screaming or dropping her backpack, and disappear with her in a matter of seconds or minutes. It was possible, Garrison conceded, but unlikely. On June 7, 1985, Lisa Holland would have graduated from Muskegon Heights High School. The ceremony was held on a warm Friday evening at the football field. Amy Kowalski walked across the stage to receive her diploma and cried. Travis Newkirk sat in the bleachers with his family and did not attend the party afterwards. The school left an empty chair on the stage with Lisa's name taped to it, a gesture that some found touching and others found morbid. Patricia and Dennis Holland did not attend. Patricia told a neighbor she could not bear it. Dennis said nothing. By July, the investigation had effectively stalled. Detective Garrison continued to follow up on tips, but they had become infrequent and increasingly implausible. Someone called to say they had seen Lisa in California. Someone else said she was in Texas. A woman in Florida called to say her daughter's friend resembled Lisa's photo, but she had the wrong age and hair color. Garrison's notes became shorter, less detailed. On July 19th, he wrote, "No new leads. Family called today for update. No update to provide. Case remains open but inactive." In August, the Muskegon Chronicle ran a follow-up story on page 6. No breaks in Holland case. It was 4 paragraphs long. The reporter interviewed Detective Garrison, who said the department had exhausted all leads but remained committed to finding Lisa. The reporter interviewed Patricia Holland, who said she believed her daughter was still alive, that a mother would know if her child was dead, that she felt Lisa was out there somewhere. Dennis Holland declined to comment. Those who worked with Dennis at the furniture factory said he had become a different person. He worked in silence, ate lunch alone, and left immediately when his shift ended. He no longer talked about the tigers or fishing or the weather. He existed in a space separate from the world around him. Coworkers stopped trying to engage him. Patricia had stopped cleaning houses. She could not focus, could not maintain the cheerful demeanor clients expected. She spent her days at home, sometimes cleaning obsessively, sometimes sitting in Lisa's bedroom, touching her daughter's clothes, her books, her hairbrush. Jennifer had started seeing a counselor at school. Michael had become withdrawn, spending hours in his room, speaking only when necessary. For those who have ever doubted someone you love, you understand that suspicion is a poison that works slowly. In October 1985, 6 months after Lisa's disappearance, people in Muskegon Heights had begun to accept that she would not be found. The unspoken consensus was that Lisa was dead, that whoever had taken her had killed her, and that her body was somewhere they would never look or never find. But there were those, a smaller number, who harbored a different thought, one they would not voice publicly. What if the answer was closer than anyone wanted to admit? What if someone in Lisa's life knew more than they were saying? What if the person responsible was someone who had been there all along, hiding in plain sight? Part 3. The silence. By the spring of 1986, the Holland family had stopped resembling a family in any recognizable sense. They lived in the same house, ate meals at the same table, but the structure that held them together had collapsed inward, leaving each of them isolated in their grief and suspicion. Dennis Holland worked the night shift and slept during the day. Patricia Holland cleaned the house endlessly, scrubbing floors that were already clean, washing windows that were already spotless, as though she could erase what had happened through sheer physical effort. Jennifer, now 13, had become nearly silent, speaking only when directly addressed. Michael, 15, had started getting into fights at school, small outbursts of violence that resulted in suspensions and parent-teacher conferences Patricia attended alone. The marriage had begun to fracture. Dennis and Patricia spoke to each other only about necessary things: bills, groceries, the children. They did not discuss Lisa. They did not discuss the investigation, which had officially gone cold by December 1985. They did not discuss their feelings or their fears. They moved around each other like strangers sharing a waiting room, polite but distant. Dennis had started sleeping on the couch more often than in the bedroom. Patricia had stopped asking him to come to bed. They had not been intimate since February 1985, before Lisa disappeared, and neither of them acknowledged this fact aloud. In June 1986, Jennifer began having nightmares. She would wake up screaming, and Patricia would run to her room to find her daughter sitting up in bed, crying, unable or unwilling to describe what she had dreamed. The nightmares occurred 3 or 4 times a week. Patricia asked if Jennifer wanted to see a counselor again. Jennifer said no. Patricia asked if the dreams were about Lisa. Jennifer said she did not remember them, but those who have ever watched a child lie, you know the signs. The averted eyes, the fidgeting hands, the way their voice loses its natural rhythm. Patricia knew her daughter was lying. She did not know why. Michael's behavior had become increasingly troubling. In September 1986, he was suspended for 3 days for shoving another student down a flight of stairs. The boy had apparently made a comment about Lisa, something cruel and thoughtless the way teenage boys do. Michael had reacted with immediate violence. When Patricia picked him up from school, he sat in the passenger seat and stared out the window, his jaw clenched. Patricia asked him what had happened. Michael said, "He said Lisa probably ran away because she was tired of living in this house." Patricia felt something cold move through her. She asked Michael if he believed that. Michael said, "I don't know what I believe anymore." Dennis Holland had developed a routine. After his shift at the factory ended at 7 a.m., he would not come directly home. Instead, he would drive. He drove through Muskegon Heights, through the surrounding towns, through places he had already searched 100 times. He drove down Getty Street, past the high school, past the retention pond, past the rest area near Coopersville. He drove as though motion itself could provide answers. He rarely spoke to anyone during these drives. He would return home around 10 or 11 a.m., sleep until 5 p.m., eat dinner in silence, and leave for work again at 10:30 p.m. Patricia watched this routine establish itself and said nothing. She had learned that there were things you could not fix, wounds you could not heal. In October 1986, Detective Garrison retired from the Muskegon Heights Police Department. He was 56 years old and had worked in law enforcement for 32 years. At his retirement party, held at the VFW Hall, colleagues gave speeches praising his dedication and thoroughness. No one mentioned the Holland case, but everyone thought about it. Garrison himself did not give a speech. He shook hands, accepted a plaque, and left early. He told his wife later that he felt like a failure. She told him he had done everything he could. He did not respond. The case was officially transferred to Detective Raymond Pierce, a younger officer who had worked property crimes and had never handled a missing persons investigation. Pierce reviewed the files, all 7 binders, and came to the same conclusion Garrison had. There were no leads, no evidence, and no clear direction. He made a few phone calls to witnesses, confirming statements that had already been confirmed. He drove the route from Getty Street to Sherman Boulevard. He found nothing new. The case remained open but inactive, filed in a cabinet in the basement of the police station, gathering dust. In November 1986, Patricia Holland made a decision. She told Dennis she was taking the children to stay with her sister in Battle Creek for a while, just a few weeks, maybe longer. She said she needed space, needed to be away from Muskegon Heights, needed to breathe. Dennis asked if she was leaving him. Patricia said she did not know. She said she could not live in the house anymore, could not walk down Getty Street, could not see the school where Lisa was supposed to have gone. Dennis did not argue. He helped them pack. On November 18th, Patricia loaded Jennifer and Michael into the car and drove south on Interstate 131. Dennis stood in the driveway and watched them leave. He went inside, sat on the couch, and realized he was alone for the first time in 20 years. Patricia's sister, Corinne, lived in a small 2-bedroom apartment in Battle Creek. She worked at the Kellogg's cereal plant and had never married. She welcomed Patricia and the children without asking too many questions. Jennifer enrolled in the local middle school. Michael enrolled in the high school. Patricia found part-time work at a grocery store. They created a new routine, a temporary life that felt both necessary and fragile. Patricia called Dennis once a week. The conversations were brief, functional. He told her he was fine. She told him the children were adjusting. Neither of them discussed the future. Jennifer's nightmares continued. Corinne heard her screaming one night in early December and asked Patricia what was wrong. Patricia said it had been happening since summer, that Jennifer would not talk about it. Corinne suggested Jennifer see a therapist. Patricia scheduled an appointment with a counselor named Dr. Ellen Sawyer, who specialized in childhood trauma. Jennifer attended sessions twice a week. For the first month, she said almost nothing. Dr. Sawyer told Patricia this was normal, that trust took time to build. Michael found work at a garage in Battle Creek, changing oil and rotating tires after school. The work seemed to help. He came home tired, ate dinner, did his homework, and went to bed. He stopped getting into fights. He made a few friends. Patricia watched her son and wondered if leaving Muskegon Heights had been the right decision, if distance from the place where Lisa had disappeared was what they all needed. But at night, lying in Corinne's spare bedroom, she felt the weight of guilt. She had left her husband. She had left the house where Lisa might one day return. She had abandoned the search. These thoughts kept her awake until dawn. In March 1987, 2 years after Lisa's disappearance, the Muskegon Chronicle ran a brief anniversary article. The headline read, "2 years later, still no answers in Holland case." The article was 3 paragraphs long. It mentioned that the investigation was ongoing but that no new leads had emerged. It included a quote from Detective Pierce, "We have not forgotten Lisa Holland. Anyone with information is urged to contact the Muskegon Heights Police Department." The article included Lisa's school photo, the same one that had run 2 years earlier. Patricia read the article in Corinne's kitchen and felt something break inside her. She realized the world had moved on. Lisa had become a cold case, a name in a file, a story people might mention when discussing unsolved mysteries. Her daughter had been reduced to a paragraph in a newspaper. For those who have ever lost someone without explanation, you understand that the absence is not the hardest part. The hardest part is the not knowing, the endless cycle of questions that have no answers. Patricia would find herself wondering, was Lisa scared when it happened? Did she suffer? Did she call out for help? Did she think about her family? Did she know she was loved? These questions circled in Patricia's mind like vultures, picking at her sanity. She began attending a grief support group at a church in Battle Creek. The other members had lost children to illness, accidents, violence. Patricia was the only one who did not know how her child had died. The others tried to be supportive, but she could see the way they looked at her, the mixture of pity and relief that their own tragedies had at least some measure of closure.